Hey, welcome everybody. Who's this? Galaxy Tab, Jane, Anane, Ian, Rennie. Good to see all of you. Okay, welcome everybody. I'm sort of coming back after some time to the Zoom talks because I feel I shouldn't get out of touch with you all and with the talks that I do. Now, what I'm going to be talking today, of course, is this. My general sort of feeling about how we need to look at our world has to do with really at some visions of people that we have some real confidence in and who we can concur with. So I've identified three people, and I'll be talking about them during this Easter term. One is, of course, Elon Musk. The other one will be Imran Khan, and the last one will be Xi Jinping. Because I believe these three people are going to really make a big difference to humanity. Now, one of the things that I would sort of consider in today's talk is how these people are actually addressing the mega problems that these people are viewing from their vision has to do with really global type of issues. One to do with global warming. And as we can see in here, one of the things about it is, of course, it's an essential threat to life. And we need to be able to do something about that. And if you look at all the politicians and all the sort of tinkering that is taking place, if we are not getting much headway, and we'll go into that a bit more detail. And this is where this vision of Elon Musk comes in, which is to provide cleaner energy. And we'll talk about that as we progress. The other problem, of course, that the world is facing is poverty, death and starvation due to lack of resources. And again, what is happening here is that lack of human development is there. And we'll see how Elon Musk's projects are going to be helping in that direction. The other one, of course, is the mega disasters that are quite possible. Nuclear war or a space asteroid coming and hitting Earth that will destroy life. So again, we'll see what his projects, how they're engaging to deal with that. So the agenda for today, let me sort of just make that a little bit bigger. Okay. Anyhow, the general agenda over here, I'll just sort of put it down here, is to give you a little overview about the geopolitics, because we are working in an environment which has to contend with a lot of challenges. And the challenges come from politics, from economics, and what we are sort of trying to deliver as solutions, in my opinion, are much more focused on technology. And that's why I'm sort of having the focus of my talks on technology. Now, geopolitics, I can start off by saying a little bit of it in a bit more detail. So what we are trying to do is to be able to extend this vision of Elon Musk and understand it in a much more holistic sense. And then look at some of the companies that are out there to deliver on his vision. And one of the biggest companies is, of course, Tesla, and we'll be talking about that. And we're also going to be able to talk about the energy, because at the end of the day, what we require talking about is clean energy for climate issues. So sustainable energy, we'll talk about that. And then, of course, homes and industry. And also, we're going to be talking about the space, the rockets, the reusable rockets that he's producing, and the communication, the global space internet, which I think I'll talk more about it as we go along. Excuse me, because I'm sort of really rushing through some of this, because I have a feeling that my system is not quite doing what I needed to do. So it's a little bit out of sync. Anyway, here's a man who we think is going to be making a big difference to our world. He's now become the richest man. Now, he's not rich because he's got a good cash flow. He's rich because his companies have put on enormous amount of value, because a lot of people back his vision. I, for one, of course, back at that vision for a long time because, buy Tesla shares and things like that. So this value of these companies have grown enormously, and therefore he's become rich in that sense. And here we have, who is he as a person? He actually was born in South Africa. His mother is here, father. He didn't get on very well much with his father. Father left, and the mother came over to Canada, where he did his studies. The mother still continues to be a model, even at the age of 70, as you can see here. He's got siblings. And with his brother, I think he set up the first project that made him money, which was PayPal. I think you've heard of PayPal. It's a sort of a application that we use to pay off with credit cards and so on. And he made enough money to be able to sell it to eBay and got a $100 or $200 million as his share, which he then invested in his vision. This is the big thing about him. He was able to sort of put down his whole sort of fortune, however big or small, behind an idea. And many a times he has come close to bankruptcy. But then, he managed to sort of pull through. So this is the type of person that is out to deliver. So because I have said many times, we all have visions. And visions may be fantastic. And we've seen people throughout history who have good visions, who are able to do good things, and over a period of time has made a difference to society. But in his case, he is delivering the change within his own lifetime and be able to do that vision and deliver on that vision, which I don't think anybody in history has been able to do that. Even the best names that come to mind, even going back a couple of thousand years, we can think of the prophets, we can think of Leonardo, we can think of Benjamin Franklin. All these people, they have delivered on a small level, but not at the grand level that he's talking about. So this is why I think we need to sort of take him seriously. Now, what's his vision? And these are the projects that he's working on. The SpaceX has to do with reusable rockets. Now, nobody has ever produced a reusable rocket. Nor NASA, nor Russia, nor China, nobody. He has done it. And he's been able to do that because of his vision. And his basic training is as an engineer. But he also studied physics. So he understands the science behind all this, and therefore was able to take quick decisions and be able to sort of move forward on that. And because he had a little bit of money, it was not necessary for him to go and seek, compromises from others. Now, here is a bit more detail about the projects that he's engaged in. Now, SpaceX has all these here, launches offering low price transport into space. Now, one of the things about the rockets is that it's a thing that you use it once and it's not reusable. So it's very expensive. So what he has done is that he has time and again devised a type of scientific base for a rocket to be able to go up and then come down again and be reusable. And with that, he's able to not only influence putting payloads into the orbit, but also impact communications. We'll talk about that as we go along. And then, of course, he's got this Tesla. Basically, he started off with the building cars, and now he's moved on to all types of different transport and also different types of energy. And this we'll be talking about as we go along. So I won't spend too much time over here. He's also got something called the Boring Company. This is a company that builds tunnels. Because you see, you've got these huge traffic problems in cities. And what he's able to do is to bore these tunnels to connect and save the people, time. So you can put the car on a skate and go through this tunnel and save on time, and you read your paper in the meantime, and you come out of at the other end at very, very high speeds and cutting down all the hassle of having to drive. Then, of course, he's got this open AI. Now, one of the biggest things that he's talking about, which is causing, I think, a lot of concern as a global issue, is AI. AI is artificial intelligence. Now, we need to be able to take this seriously because it's like technology creeping in and ever so slowly, but before you know it, it's like a tsunami that's hitting us. And we are at a point where it is becoming a little bit of a tsunami. And when I say tsunami, and one of the things that Elon Musk says, which we have to sort of really come to grips with, is not to use this AI into warfare. Because already we see AI is being used to sort of shut down utilities and do all sorts of mischief all over the world. And furthermore, once you get into the war sort of domain, then you've got these drones and so on that sort of strike down from thousands of miles across in the world. Somebody says, push the button and thousands of people die. So, this is all AI already in there, but this type of news is not sort of broadcast too easily or too widely because, the public would be outraged. So a lot of this is just done in a hidden way. That's why WikiLeaks is still in jail. And it's a disgrace for UK, the government, to keep him in prison. They talk about journalistic freedom and all that, and yet keeping him in prison, I think, is a disgrace. And of course, USA being the biggest user of abusive technology and media is using this AI very, very sort of openly, but it doesn't get reported that much. You have to come to this forum to be able to understand what's going on. And if you look at some of the talks that I've done before, if you go to my archive, you'll see a lot of this stuff there. And Neurolink is something which I think is again very important, again of the scale that we need to deal at a global level, because that means that we are talking about biotech here. Biotech means we have implantation in our brain with sort of types of chips, if you like, which will enhance our capability enormously, but we need to be able to do that in a sensible way. And what Elon Musk is doing is something that is sensible to begin with, because those people who are paralyzed and can't move and so on, by sticking a chip into the brain, it bypasses the relevant areas of the brain and can activate the muscles that have laid dormant because that part of the brain is not working. So Neurolink is very much making advances on that front. So you can see that's a huge area that is coming as a single person because that's his vision. And of course, hundreds and thousands of people who think like him, who have the sort of ability, they're joining him to deliver on that. So here we are back to this again, a little bit on the automobile side to see if you're going to be having these type of issues that are going to be dealt with, which are the companies that are going to be doing that? And we just saw that one of the big companies is Tesla, and they're going to be able to deliver on that automobiles. Now, these automobiles that he's coming out with, I'll talk a bit more about it. These are called electric vehicles, EVs. And the normal sort of car that we have is called ICE car, which means internal combustion engine car. Now, that means fossil fuels. Now, EVs are the ones that deal with the batteries. And batteries get power from the sun, which is alternate energy forms. So at the moment, it means that we have to charge them through electricity. And I will come down later to see how that gets complemented by the solar panels and so on. Now, this is one of the pet projects, of course, is we said this is delivered by Tesla. This aerospace is by SpaceX. SpaceX is the one that's going to be doing reusable rockets. And he feels that reusable rockets are the only way that we can come out of the earthbound type of situation that humanity faces itself. So these reusable rockets are going to take us to Mars and build colonies over there. So that's more of that later. And the other thing, of course, I talked about, when I talked about poverty earlier on, Now, that's because of lack of resources in the world. People don't have. Now, half the world doesn't have internet. Now, in order to put, cables and all that takes, enormous time and money. So what he is doing is coming up with a space Starlink satellite communication system. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. And of course, energy, which is a very, very fundamental to our homes and cities and industry and so on. We'll talk about it as we go along quickly. I've got quite a lot of things that I would need to cover, so I'll just rush. So transportation has to do with not only the Tesla cars, but he's got something called Hyperloop, which means that this connects between cities at more than the speed of sound. So you can sit and be able to sort of, go to the other place very, very quickly. This, we talked about the boring tunnel, the tunneling thing, this AI, and then the healthcare. Healthcare has to do with that Neurolink I just mentioned. So let's move on. Now, okay, first of all, if no action is taken by this climate agencies that meet at Paris and then Glasgow here, and before that somewhere else, they come up with some sort of resolutions, but they're not delivering on it. The progress is very, very slow. And what we are seeing is that we are having a lot of pollution on the atmosphere, a lot of melting of polar ice caps and all that, flooding and droughts in other areas. Now, what happens if we don't take action? Temperature increase up to 2 degrees, in average temperature, if they rise by more than up to even 2 degrees, a third of the planet is going to die, which means the species and the vegetation and so on. Because you see, when it starts to get warm, these species then migrate to different areas. And as a result, lose their habitat, and therefore they perish. So a third of life will disappear if we don't control the rise within 2 degrees. And we are not heading that way. Now, here is the sort of gauge that tells you where we are. See, we are here, and the temperature is 1.5. I think it's 1.5. Now, if you don't take any action, the temperature will rise to 2.8. And the current policies are going to take it to 3 degrees over what is required. So if you look at all the projections, we are not going to hit the target at all. So it's a very, very worrisome type of situation. And of course, if you leave it to the hands of the politicians, they are the most incompetent lot, if you ask me, and therefore they're not going to deliver. So look at the emissions that we have. 42% of the global emissions are done by 40% of the global GDP, and that's by these 2 countries. They control 40% of the total GDP, and they're responsible for these emissions. But European Union is coming out with some good program, which is to try and bring in policies that are going to make it a green-friendly type of approach. And this is what they're trying to do. EU climate neutrality by 2050, higher targets for 2030, those who can achieve it by 2030, well and good. Support the EU industry, decarbonize transport, heating and industry, invest 1 trillion euros. So that's a good start. And one of the reasons why the gigafactory in Berlin of Elon factory, Tesla factory, which was, in the, hanging or delayed by 8 months because of bureaucracy, suddenly got the approval, because when Ukraine started, this conflict started, they needed, electricity and all that quickly. So they gave the things where, the authorities did their part and made the approval. So Giga Berlin has started to operate since the last 2 weeks. Now, how are we going to transition to sustainable energy? Well, through all this, transport requires that we use 2 times all the electricity that we have, 2 times is used for transport, and 3 times is used by homes for heating and hot water and so on. This is just to give you a measure of the size of the problem. So here he's talking about essentially, if I can make this a bit bigger. see the utilities, the Tesla Energy, mega packs, and then, so what his company is going to be doing is producing batteries to run the cars. He's going to have batteries to be placed in homes so that they can supply the power, and the power will come from the solar panels on the roof or from the grid. And if you have excess power that you generate, you put it back on the grid. I'll show you a little bit more of that later as we go on. Now, this is where all the energy gets spent. The emissions are coming from these sectors. As you can see, transport is a big, big chunk, and then industry is the next biggest chunk. And there are others like agriculture and residential and these types of areas. So we can see it's really the manufacturing and transport which need to be done very, very quickly to control them. So on the automotive side, what is Tesla's mission? Now, it was founded in 2003, the second project after PayPal, and still one of his most ambitious. So here we have basically a future that is going to be self-driving cars and be able to have cars which do not emit carbon dioxide. So they are, in fact, green energy type of utilization. Now, how are we going to charge these batteries? Through these solar panels. Now, because the sun is not there throughout the day and night, during the day, this electricity that gets generated, that gets stored into the batteries. That was the big sort of breakthrough when Elon Musk came in and started to use these batteries for cars, because nobody before that thought it was possible. And he did that. So there you have, again, his vision telling him that it can be done, because his background in engineering and physics, he said, yes, we can do that. So what is Tesla? Tesla is not just an auto company. It's also an AI and robotics. Now, why do I say that? Because he is also working on something called full self-driving, which means sooner or later in the future, we don't have to drive our cars. It's going to be driven automatically because there's sufficient intelligence in the car. Now, already he's made enormous progress on this. And what he has done by way of that is he has installed the type of software in these cars, the FSD cars that has that feature in it. And it relays back all the information to a big computer called Dojo. And that sort of compiles all the information. So here is AI information constantly being updated to make it learn to how to drive better and better. So you see, if you look at all the advances that have been done in the past about AI, it is in a university lab or something like that with very little sort of resources. But here you've got about 1 million cars on the road giving back information as to whether what you're looking at is a tree or a fire hydrant or whatever, and therefore is able to take all the decisions very, very quickly. And of course, let's not forget, it's not only the AI and robotics, it's the energy. It's because the batteries are part of the whole sort of company's activities. The energy is the one that is going to sort of be extended not only to the car, but to homes as well and to industry. Now, this is one of the factories that has opened up just a couple of weeks ago. It took about a couple of years to build, but it's such an enormous thing. I'll show you pictures of that soon. It'll probably produce something like 2 million cars per year. Now, to give you an idea as to how big a number that is, the total population of cars in the world is 2 billion. 2 billion with a B. Although, EVs are still a small percentage, 1 or 2% of the global car market. This type of factory is producing 2 every year, and it's going to be producing even more as you go along. And it's not just one factory like this. There's 5 other factories as well. So you can see the enormous number of cars are going to be coming up, which are going to be, in fact, very eco-friendly. Now, you can also gauge the type of productivity of this particular Giga Berlin factory, is that it is producing more cars than any of than all the Audi's 19 factories combined. So you can see he has optimized the manufacture of these cars to the point where he's getting, these huge numbers. And what is he producing? He's producing all ranges of cars, from sports cars to sedans to sort of trucks to little smaller cars or self-driving cars. So enormous amount of energy is going into it. Now, since we had recently, because of COVID, there was a shortage of chips, and all the world was affected by the shortage of chips, as you might remember. So what happened is that even Tesla would have been affected because it's an EV. But then these people are so smart, because one of the things about Tesla is that he has attracted the best minds, engineers in the world to come and work for him, because they're all sort of, believe in his vision. And therefore, they were able to produce their own chip. And that chip is becoming now programmable to the point where what he was buying from TSMC, the Taiwan sort of chip maker who produces half the world's chips, is that he was able to program his own chip to do the job what was necessary for his car. So you can see how quickly he adapts, and therefore his production in output of cars was not affected, whereas all the other cars of the world, of their companies were affected. So why do we need to trust in this? Well, because first of all, he's got a vision and is pursuing that, and not just for making money. The people who just go in for a project for making money are people like Bezos of Amazon or Branson of this Virgin Group. They're not out there with a vision. They're out there to make big bucks. And that's why this guy is different from them. So we can trust him. So he attracts the best manpower, you can see. New engineers are joining him every day. And he's working on a humanoid robot. I'll talk about that just in a moment. Now, this is the picture of one of the factories. This is Berlin that opened up a couple of weeks ago. You won't believe how big this is. It's about a half a mile, a quarter of a mile long. It's immense. And this is what's inside it. Already they're going into production. And somebody I saw the clip today. They're saying that they counted the number of cars that were coming out. This is a factory that just got opened up 2 weeks ago. And they have to still ramp up as to increase production. But already they're producing one car every 2.5 minutes, which means about quite a lot of cars every month. So the whole operation is automated. In fact, what they have done is they've got in for something called a giga press. Now, Italian company makes this giga press. What it does is it sort of presses these big metal sheets into the right configuration and shape to give you half the car. So what you do is you take these big sort of pressed steel and put it together and make a car very, very quickly. Here's this factory. There's about 5 of them here. The pictures are here. See, there's another picture, Nevada, Fremont, this is Shanghai. And the second one in Shanghai is opening up as well. Now, we talked about Tesla bot. Now, what's a Tesla bot? Tesla bot is a robot. Now, why is he going in for robots? Because, see, one of his theories is that the world doesn't have enough people to generate wealth, because our economy is based on labor and, of course, capital. But he says, sooner or later, if we have more labor, then we can produce more. And therefore, he says a robot can also do that. Now, why is he going in for a robot rather than some other company? Well, the Tesla car intelligence that he has built into the car which recognizes as it's moving along its whole environment. So it's already half human in many ways in recognizing what's around you and being able to navigate, through it. So the intelligence needed, he puts it into this robot, and this robot can then do some of the things that he is spelling out that initially will only do these. Those jobs which are repetitive, those jobs which are boring, and those jobs which are dangerous. So he wants to sort of just limit that robot to that. But I can see that robot as AI or AGI, general intelligence, keeps growing. These robots can do all sorts of much more sophisticated work than the one that I just mentioned. Okay, how does the solar home work? Well, here you've got the solar panels, and here you've got the grid here. Now, here is the home, and there's a panel here. The solar batteries, the solar panels there give you the power, and that gets stored into batteries called power wall, and that supplies all the electricity you need for the home, and excess will go into the grid. And you get paid for that, you see. Here's his solar city and the solar homes. So these roofs, as you can see, have got solar panels. So there'll be, in fact, clean energy even at your home level and city level. Now, these are the batteries that are storage capabilities that are available. Here, this is a power wall for a small home. This one has got batteries underneath here, which is for a car. Then you've got larger for a little factory. And then you've got, even for a city, you can keep on adding these panels, these big boxes, so that you can have unlimited battery power. So in Australia, they have already done that, where the whole city is practically powered by these batteries, and they get charged by the solar or the wind or solar panels. And they're proving to be very economical. Here, this is what is in Australia. See, these things and these panels here, put the charged battery, and the battery then supplies the homes. Okay, Starlink. I said, poverty is linked to lack of resources. And therefore, what is Starlink? Starlink is, as I said, the internet space that doesn't require cables. So what you do is you get your signal from the satellite coming straight into your modem. In fact, in this case, it comes straight into your dish, which is pointing towards it, and you get all the signals coming in. I'll just show you again here. Now, what it's trying to deliver is low-cost global broadband capabilities. You see, without internet, half the world is unable to make progress. The moment they have a bit of connectivity, they start to sort of grow, and education comes in. Because the moment you have internet, the education facilities will be available at your fingertips. So you can see the advancements that can take place to humanity the world over. This is the internet penetration at the moment in the world. The green areas are the ones that have internet, and the dark green, a lot of internet. And the red and brown things are where there isn't any, practically, or very little. The penetration is very low. Okay, this is just saying, how is this different? The Starlink is different. Now, already there are some satellites called geocentric satellites, which are about 20,000 miles above the Earth level, the sea level. The time taken to go and come back, you can see in our TV screens, when somebody asks the question, there's a long wait, and then you have the answer coming back. Now, that is because the distance between the geocentric satellite and the Earth is 20,000 miles. Elon Musk's satellites are going to be just a few hundred miles up on the surface of the Earth, which means that you can get instant reaction. This is what is called latency, and the latency is going to be very, very sort of quick. It's low. The cost is also going to be very affordable because, he's devising it in such a way that for $100, you can have anywhere on Earth the ability to get the signal. And it's going to be fast. It's as fast as some of your broadband in the city. And if you give one of these things at $100 to a village, then the whole village practically can share in that broadband thing that is there. So speed is also quite big. Latency is very, very sort of low. It means it's instantaneous sort of response. Now, here's the satellite network around the world. Now, between the satellites, there are going to be over 12,000 initially, and then rising up to 40,000 eventually. And they communicate with each other through laser sort of communication. So if you happen to be right under that network over there, even if one of them falls off or somebody shoots it down, the other ones immediately come together and deliver the signal. So it's difficult for anybody to destroy that network. It's amazing type of technology. This is the latency. With this geocentric, it runs into a half a minute type of thing, whereas this is milliseconds. Now, this is a picture of the satellites. These are low, so 7,000 of them at a low orbit, and then 4,000 of them in a higher orbit. And even the higher orbit is only less than 1,000 miles, not the 20,000 miles of the geocentric. This is the communication between the two satellites. And these satellites are intelligent. And also they won't cause a debris in space because when they sort of are finished their life, they will have a control which brings them down to a low orbit, they burn away, except for a small part which is to do with leather, which will be not burnt. So you have very, very good control over these satellites. And now how these satellites being put into space? It's because of these reusable rockets. You see, this rocket is a called Falcon. It goes up, puts a satellite, and then comes back. Now, because he's got that capability, nobody else has been able to put a satellite so cheaply. So that he's able to put thousands of satellites and therefore be able to have a whole network, global. Now, this is how it looks to obtain this. Here's the satellite in space. This is your home dish. You straight get into a computer. It can also transmit to a local thing if it's a village or something that can distribute it over here. Yes. So here is now. What does he want? Starlink. He's hoping that Starlink revenues will be sufficient for him to be able to then fund the colony in Mars. So you can see his vision is not just a vision, but he knows how to get there. And this project that has to do with Starlink, which means that if you get even 10 million people using Starlink, he's going to have enormous amount of money coming in as revenue because he's going to charge $100. So 10 million times 100, that's 110 to the 1,000 million. Well, anyway, big numbers. And what we have is that money he's using for his space development. You see, what happens with NASA and all the others national programs is the governments, when they come and change, they don't give the same amount of money. So whereas a private company like Elon Musk, they will pursue that with the energy and with the funding that they know they have devised, and therefore it's not fluctuating, with the government. So he has the means of doing that. So here we are. This is basically saying that he's going to use this program. This company has not come into the market as yet. And part of Starlink, Starlink is part of the SpaceX. So when the Starlink becomes part of an IPO or goes into the stock market, we can all buy that. And then that will fund not only the sale of the shares, but also the revenue that Starlink will generate to fund the space program. So we don't have to pay anything out of our taxes and so on. Now, here are the rockets, the reusable rockets. Yeah, you see these two rockets are coming back. These are the boosters that came back and landed there, which is astonishing. So here, this is a picture basically saying you take off the rocket, the boosters that separate, and they come down here. And then, of course, it carries on, and then the other booster comes and settles down, and then the payload is going out to space. So look at this at your own time, which is there. So what's he going to do in Mars? He's going to build a colony like this. And for that, he says he needs at least 1 million people that he's going to take over from Earth in these spaceships that he's devising. And each of these spaceships that he's got can take 100 tons of payload. And he can use this not only to ferry people to Mars, but also to in Earth. He can take somebody from Los Angeles to wherever, maybe to India, which is halfway across the world, for less than 1 hour. So already, that is a possibility. Technology is there. Now, this is Neurolink. I told you that those people who are paralyzed, they can, in fact, be cured by sticking some of these, very thin electrodes in the brain, and be able to give them the mobility that they don't have. So we have, in fact, a very, very good, plausible technology that can be put to work for people's benefits. Now, I mentioned about this robo-taxis. One of the things about Elon Musk is he's saying, look, sooner or later, not everybody in the world is going to have a car. What we will end up by having is not ownership of cars, but we will be able to hitch a ride on what he calls robo-taxis. It's a bit like Uber, except that there won't be a driver in the car. So what we are what we will have is a lot of people will not own cars, because all they'll do is just they push a button in their phone and a car comes to their door, picks them up, takes them and drops you wherever you want to go, and then carry on. So people start to use, these types of services. Initially, he says that possibly what will happen is once this full FSD comes along, people can buy the FSD and the Tesla, and rather than keeping the car in the garage, they can sort of make it to go out and work and come back after it's done all these trips. So you can see there's going to be a big change in the automotive world. So autonomous driving will radically change the world, referred to as a very rare event in human history, exerting mental. So rather than spending lots of energy driving, you can just sit back and relax. So he says this is marking a turning point where computers will take over the majority of daily activities responsible. So you can see technologies, he's bringing in all different types of technology together to be able to deliver for our requirements. That's why I feel the technologies, the engineers and the scientific people are the people who will solve the problems of the world, not these politicians. Okay, he's doubling down on that. He's putting a lot of effort. So let's skip that for the moment. Okay, the types of experiments that he's conducting is he's putting these chips into these animals here, this Dorothy and Gertrude and Joyce. And after doing the experiment, he took the things out and there was no ill effect of any sort. So he's making a lot of progress on that. These are the common self-driving buses that will eventually come. You just sort of, go in and get dropped, and the cost per mile is going to be very low. And this is the tunneling machine that he's also working on. I'm going to sort of not go into that too much because we don't have much time, except to sort of just mention one thing of the financial sort of well-being of this company. Now, in 2009, you see the Tesla stock was nearly 700. Then we see in 2022, it's about 1,000. You might say it's not too much of an increase, but this is after a split of 5-to-1, which means that share is worth $5,000, not 1,000. That's one of the 5. So the 700 has gone to 5,000. Now, my own belief is that that 5,000 will go to 10,000 before long as well, because it's incredible what he's doing and he's achieving. So anyway, I want to stop here and ask for your basic comments and any questions that you may have. Okay, I'm going to stop the share. Put that loading thing there. Okay, well, I'm glad that I haven't sent you all off to sleep.
How many of us are there?
Okay, Robin, yes.
That was fascinating, Shafiq. I've got two completely different questions, but one is, what about natural non-growing resources such as lithium? And if Russia has 80% of a resource like that, how can a privately owned but international company grow? And the other thing is a sort of personality thing. If Elon Musk becomes, if this power goes to his head and he becomes more and more like Putin, how can the world constrain him?
Well, one of the things that I find that he has by way of a team is a very highly qualified team. The people who, in fact, there are two Indians who are very much on, by his side. One is doing the dojo, which is the hardware, the fastest computer in the world at the moment, which is the brains of the Tesla car, if you like, which gets the feed of input from every car that is sold. So the team is very committed to that vision.
Hello.
And it may, as time progresses, that team will, of course, be influential enough to be able to sort of, influence him if he goes outside the norms, as it were. He's outside the norm anyway, but I think given his particular personality so far, he has been very, very sort of acceptable, although at times he does make comments which are a little bit not taken, by the financial world too well. The other thing about resources, lithium is one of the main ingredients of the battery, and that is freely available all over the world. In fact, what Biden is doing, once he realized, that GM is not the EV leader, but actually Tesla, and they're making batteries, he's allocating a lot of funds to develop the mining in USA itself. And of all the countries that has huge deposits of lithium, you won't believe, is Afghanistan, which is like the oil of Saudi Arabia. Now, if you look at lithium, the prices have gone in just 2 years from about $16,000 a ton to $70,000 to $80,000. So demand is huge, but recycling of all these batteries is also underway. And I think Elon Musk is also talking about vertical integration in terms of going into the mining business in order to ensure that lithium is there for his cars. So I think that probably is the way forward for him and for the humanity. Yes, Balila.
Okay, just a question. I mean, I agree that he has very original mind and is very innovative. That's true. Just the idea of solar energy is an enormous step. And I had imagined that with solar energy, countries, third world countries in Africa, Asia, South America, they could just solve all their problems and, get into, move into the current century. But that hasn't happened. And I presume it's because of affordability. And Elon Musk, I have never heard him, his vision doesn't incorporate the third world. He's just, I have never heard a comment. He can easily make it affordable to these countries.
Yeah, you
Don't
see,
you
the thing
think?
about solar panels is the solar cells, which have got to become efficient. Now, the efficiency of solar cells is about 30%, and then some research labs have said they're moving it up to 40% and so on. So the technology of solar cells, although the price has come down enormously because of China, because they make lots of these, yet the affordability is not there, as you correctly say. And I think what Elon Musk is doing is giving you an infrastructure and the tools to be able to sort of create the means of obtaining the energy at the home level and at the industry level, at the city level as well. Sooner or later, these utilities are going to be replacing a lot of their assets with batteries, which means, again, the research that he's doing on batteries is very significant. So that's one side of delivering on the technology. The problem with the poor countries is not so much lack of resources, it's corruption. Now, if you look at the most recent thing that has happened in Pakistan yesterday, the day before, you had a very straightforward, good leader in Imran Khan, who wanted, to pursue a policy which was in the interest of the country, removed a regime change by USA. Now, this is a disgrace, as you all know, and that's out there in the open now. So you can see, if you look at all the poor countries, the leaders of the poor countries, they have stashed money abroad through money laundering. I did a talk on that once before. They loot the country. So it's not the lack of resources. It's all these corrupt leaders that are supported no end by having to sort of do the biddings of all these big interests that are there. So, I mean, in terms of, lack of resources, it's undeveloped resources which have been stolen by the very people who they should be governing, in those countries. Yes. Sorry, I don't know.
First of all, no, I just nothing to do with anything, but I found that the red writing very difficult to read, but the red writing very difficult.
Oh, I see. Thank you for that, Diana. I'll try and change the color next time.
But the other thing I was going to say is I found the whole thing quite fascinating and terrifying and Brave New World. but how would it affect the human body to travel so fast from one place to another? I mean, it might well have a terrific effect on the internal organs and everything, I would have thought.
Oh, the speed, you mean? If you go from one place to the other in 1 hour? Yeah, I think it's the acceleration you need to worry. Okay, right. So as far as the acceleration, that is the one that we need to watch out. But I think it will be it'll be manageable the way that they're thinking of, because the cruising speed is going to be of the order of about 70 to 80,000 miles an hour. Yeah, Mim.
I do wonder about the installation of solar panels, or rather the obstruction of solar panels. I have a feeling that the people with so much money, they don't know what to do with it, are reluctant to invest in solar panels because there's no money in it for them. It's very cheap and it's immediate, but they want these big contracts like nuclear power stations to invest in, and that gives them a long-term, a big return on their investments. And I wonder, I may be completely wrong, but this is the feeling I get, and this is why we get so much political objections to green energy. There's no investment there for these super rich people who have
you feel that see, at the moment,
of course,
the solar panels are still not at a point where it's very affordable, even though the costs have come down. In fact, the cost of alternate energy now is less than fossil fuel energy costs. You see? So this is why the green energy is making progress, because the fossil energy is proving to be more expensive. Now, nuclear power at the moment, we need to go for the short run, because especially in Europe, because of Ukraine and all that, it's a political type of maneuvering that is taking place. Whereas I feel Russia has so much abundance of gas and resources, it should be made a friend, not an enemy. But it doesn't suit USA to have Russia as a friend. It wants it as an enemy, because they want to eventually break up Russia, because Russia is so big that they eventually break up and then have it under their control, the smaller entities. So, you know, it's a real thing. The European Union should put their foot down and not become dependent on US shale sort of gas, because that's what's happened. If you become dependent on USA, they're going to turn the screws on Europe anyway. So if you have to go to Russia because of the bad press that you get, you make Russia into a demon, we're going to all lose, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'd like him as a friend.
Sorry?
I don't think I'd like him as a friend, Putin. I wouldn't want him as a friend. I mean, you can compare him quite easily with Hitler.
Well, I'm not
as a friend.
I'm not so sure. But anyway, you're entitled to your opinion. Here, Jane and Ian, go ahead.
If the sunny third world countries are a good place to put solar panels, but the energy is required in the first world, how are you going to get it transferred? Isn't that going to be incredibly expensive to build transcontinental grids?
Well, the thing is this, the third world countries are using a lot of coal. To get them off coal, it would be good to go for alternate energy so that the emissions are going to be reduced. Now, if you take the rich world, even Europe and USA, there's enough sun that is there to make for at least a good portion of your energy needs. And the rest can be met by nuclear power stations. Now, the nuclear power station, which was a political decision of Germany, that came right after the Fukushima disaster. And I think if we ensure that not only do we pursue research in nuclear sort of fission type of energy, there is a type of material called thorium rather than uranium. And thorium doesn't leave any particular bad sort of effects or bad products. The reason why we have gone for nuclear uranium energy is because Nixon took the decision to go with that when he had a choice of going to thorium also. And the reason why he went for uranium is because the byproduct is plutonium, and plutonium produces the bombs. So you can see how big a decision that was made at that time has put the whole world in jeopardy, whereas thorium research is going on in a big way. And if that research had been done at that time itself, we would have had thorium reactors which were benign and were no byproducts. So it was the byproduct of nuclear energy that forced the decision, you know, the strategic type of decision, which was, I think, a real disgrace.
I believe the real purpose of the early British nuclear power stations was actually mainly to produce plutonium for our own bombs.
Yeah. I think most of the countries go for nuclear energy to produce their own uranium or plutonium.
Are there any robot taxis? Are there any robot taxis in use?
Well, at the moment there aren't, but they have started an experiment in Las Vegas with a few cars to do this robo-taxi type of thing there. The software, which is called FSD software, is not fully, it's at level 4. It needs to be at level 5 to be completely as good as a human being. So it's still at level 4, and therefore can only do some very, if you like, not very difficult type of driving, but they're coming into the market anyway. Because you see, the beauty of this particular experiment is the moment you are out in the market, then the cars give you feedback. And this big computer called Dojo, this is monitoring all that data coming in every second, and therefore is able to interpret and then train the car to be a better driver every minute practically, or at every update that they do. So it's a type of scheme that is bound to give results before long. We can't tell how long it'll take, but we are making a lot of progress, they say. So I'm very hopeful.
It
See, in
seems
my
to me,
lifetime.
Can I just clarify what I meant by the third world having solar energy? It means that they'll be able to catch up with industrial development, which at the moment they're backward because they can't afford the
Yes, it's
gas and oil.
Circle,
So
it?
it's, and their development has been held up by the lack of funds. Now, actually, and in addition, I have to mention there's some comment, and I'll look this up, that the solar energy from the Sahara can actually be exported to Europe. I'll have a look at that it is a possibility that they have. Well, I mean, obviously the sun always shines there.
Yes.
And that solar energy could be transferred. But again, it's the affordability that is the problem.
Well, you're absolutely right about Sahara, because I read that also. It is a German engineer who sort of wrote a paper some decades ago that a few hundred kilometers square of solar panels in the Sahara can give the whole energy for Europe. And so does Elon Musk, as I will say. Elon Musk's principle is that he says, you've got the sun, which is a free resource for all of us, but we are not using it because our efficiency of conversion from solar to electricity is still, at a low level. And the cost is, although coming down, they'll be a bit more affordable sooner or later. And I think a lot of these poorer countries that have a lot of sun, especially in the tropics, they are moving into solar sort of parks and so on. They're bringing it in, but you need to be able to, put more resources, as you say, in that area. I agree with you.
Mm.
Yes, Diana.
I just wondered are these magic cars going to be able to avoid traffic jams?
Yes. They are going to be
plan their
better
route.
than human drivers. They'll be better than human drivers. They will not have so many accidents, because 1 million people die every year because of accidents. These cars will not kill a human being.
No, I don't mean that. I mean, will they be able to reroute if they know there's a traffic jam somewhere?
Yes. Because this is what the whole research is all about. When I look at some of these auto driving cars, they have a camera and they're doing it when they put out a new version of it. It drives very, very smartly. I mean, it's very good. It recognizes people on the sidewalks and the traffic lights and the turnings and the traffic, So amazing how clever it is. So that the cleverness of that AI is now going to be sooner or later put into a Tesla bot. And Tesla bots are going to be taking over some of the boring and repetitive and dangerous jobs, which I think would be a very good thing.
It's terrifying.
Well, it'll make your housework very, very much manageable, because at the moment you've got these vacuum cleaners which go around, knocking all sorts of things. And but there he won't knock, because they're designed to be smaller than you, 5'2", something like that, and they can't run very fast, and they can't lift too heavier stuff. So they are going to be like a weak human being, but smart only enough to be able to do some specific task. Initially, at least.
Oh, well, who knows? It's a brave new world it is.
Yeah.
Which of his ideas have been carried out? I'm not clear. I mean, there's so many ideas he has, but very few has actually been
Well,
carried
all
out.
of them have been carried out. If you take Tesla, Tesla is not just an automotive company, it's an
Yeah.
energy company because it's got the battery development, and it's got this AI as well, part of it because of full self-driving. Then it's got the Starlink, which is already operational. 2,000 satellites are up there, and people
Yeah.
are already using it. And then you've got the space rockets, which are already using in order to put the satellites up. And then
Yeah.
you've got the boring company that's already doing some tunnels in Vegas that they have done that.
The tunnels.
And then
They're building
Neurolink,
the tunnels in Vegas.
yeah, they put some tunnels from the convention center to some other place where there's a traffic jam, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yes, Ian.
This is a bit science fiction, but looking ahead 200 or 300 years, don't you think human beings are going to become completely redundant, and maybe we'll die out and the world will simply be inhabited by intelligent robots?
Well, this is the big thing that Elon Musk talks about. He said that if we don't control AI, then AI is coming in so fast that they are going to sort of make humans fairly redundant before long, because you see, the people who will deploy this AI very, very quickly are the corporate world who want to make more money and therefore get rid of all the human labor. Now, I read a book some time back where they were talking about how McDonald's, they sort of looked at the automation that is possible, and they centralized about 50 of their shops having one central type of thing, order taking, and the local outlets would deliver, and they reduced their staff by practically half, you know. So this type of automation is coming in a big way. So not only that, if you look at the moment, the impact of automation, 80% of the jobs that have been lost in the last couple of decades is because of automation. So if you go even to the shops here to shop, I can do my own sort of, you know, charge card and pick up the thing there and scan it and so on and come out. So there's no salesperson required. So that automation has come into our lives already, and it's going to creep into medical areas, into every area that you can think of. We have computers, and that's automation, and that means lesser jobs for people. But then remember one thing, if you do lose jobs to automation, the wealth still gets created. So somebody is still making money and the taxes are being paid by those companies. So the money is being made by the government so that the government then can give you the UBI money to the people who are less deployed. So the human beings can then be going in to do something which they prefer to do, which is maybe a more creative work, than to be able to sort of just do a repetitive work in a factory. Yeah, Mim.
You say these companies will pay their taxes. Will they? McDonald's, the company you've just been talking about, has just avoided paying something in the region of 250 million pounds in taxes.
Yeah, you see, the company laws and so on that are there, they are made by the rich people. You know, in Parliament, in our Westminster here, they make laws which favor the rich, and it has always been so. You know, the Parliament here is based on landowners in the old days, and that power is still there in Parliament. So poor Labour is still always struggling, but it is the big money that calls the shot. Even if you take the City of London, they have a permanent guy sitting there in Parliament who's not elected, who oversees all the legislation to make sure that it's not anti-city legislation. So you can see the laws that are framed. It's not just in this part of the world. If you take even the poor countries, the people who come into Parliament, say take Pakistan, which I'll be talking about next week, the landlords get elected and they frame legislation saying, okay, no tax on agriculture. And they're the biggest landlords, so they don't pay taxes. See? So these tribal chiefs and these big people who are moneyed, they come into parliament. If you take the Indian parliament, I think about 30% of the MPs have criminal records, Indian parliament. And I wouldn't be surprised that a lot of them are, in fact, the new government that has come in Pakistan, the prime minister, his driver had $4 billion in his accounts.
That's
And
not
yet he hasn't been
politics.
charged. And yet he hasn't been charged. So he's already, absconder, and he's been made prime minister in place of Imran Khan, who fought against all these people. Now, these people came in because America wanted a regime change. I'll talk about that next time a bit more. And this is not just hearsay, it's all with proof. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Would you mind telling me the name of that fuel that you mentioned, the alternative?
Yeah, thorium. It's called thorium. Thorium.
How do you spell that?
THORIUM.
TOH.
No, THO.
THO.
RIUM.
RIUM. Thank you, because I'd be very worried about nuclear energy because of the waste. Now, does this diorium produce nuclear waste? Yeah,
it does produce nuclear waste, but it is not what I would call harmful. It's not like plutonium, which is harmful.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's plenty of thorium in India.
Sorry?
There's plenty of thorium deposits in India.
The thorium deposits. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so much money behind war, they get the funds and then they sort of, support the industries. And then the big people who make the money, they come into parliament, they frame the laws. That's why it is incumbent on us to make sure that the type of people that we elect have a vision. And not just want to be like Branson or Bezos.
The trouble is we don't have the vision to elect them. So we get people like Trump or Putin who gets in for 2 terms and changes the constitution so that he's there permanently.
Yeah. The people who go into politics and get right to the top, apart from a few that I can think of, one who had a vision, which was Angela Merkel, also a very good person, very good politician. Imran Khan is another good one. And there are some people like that. But if you take people like Biden or even Boris Johnson, I mean, they're a disgrace, I think. I'm sorry I have to speak very openly, but I can do that because it's a closed loop type of class.
Oh, we appreciate that. Or I do anyway. One of the problems is the fact that people are hiding information, so it's good to have it open.
Yeah. I think, one of the things that Tesla did or Elon Musk did was he bought a big stake in Twitter, 9% nearly, which makes him the biggest shareholder in Twitter. And his idea was to try and bring about a change in Twitter because he says free speech needs to be done freely. Basically, he's an absolutist in that sense of free speech, although I'm not sure whether to be absolutist means that you allow every old thing. I'm sure there are certain red lines that you still have to have. But because he's so much into AI, he can, in fact, figure out which is fake news and which is not, and which could be harmful and so on. So AI could be made to work on Twitter much better than what people are doing at the moment. But then because the board put some blocks in his way, he said, no, I'm not going to be part of the board anymore. So I'm not sure what the future is. This is today's news. I think he might start his own platform, or he might buy the whole of Twitter. You never know.
I've got to leave. Bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for all the comments, and then very good to be back in my old job, as it were. So next week is going to be on another character, and after that another one. So hope to see you then. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. That was
Thank you for all your
fascinating.
comments
Really
and
good.
questions.
Thank you.
Bye.
Wonderful. Yeah. Yeah.